AITA for exposing a forged signature during my dad's memorial dinner? That dinner wasn't the first time my adoption had been used like a leash. It was just the first time my whole family heard the chain rattle. I'm Zoe, 33, the daughter Vivian and Daniel adopted when I was little, 2 years before Aaron was born. Growing up, I heard two very different versions of what that meant. Dad's version was simple. You don't owe us for being our daughter. Mom's version always came with a warning. We chose you. Don't forget that. She usually said it after I disagreed with her, asked for something Aaron had received without asking, or failed to look grateful enough while being blamed for a problem I hadn't created. Dad never talked about adoption like it was charity. He was the one who taught me to ride a bike, holding the back of the seat while I yelled at him not to let go. He was also the one who let go anyway, then ran behind me laughing when I made it halfway down the block before realizing I was balancing on my own. Every birthday card he gave me was signed the same way. Love, Dad. Not Daniel. Not your adoptive father. Just Dad. He loved me. I never doubted that. But he also hated conflict, especially conflict with Vivian. When she made a cutting remark, he would squeeze my shoulder afterward or take me out for ice cream instead of confronting her. As a child, I thought that made him kind. As an adult, I understood that comfort after the fact wasn't the same as protection in the moment. Aaron learned that difference early. When he was 9, he knocked a framed family photo off the mantel while throwing a foam football in the living room. The glass shattered across the floor. Mom came running in and looked at me first. Why did you let him play near the mantel? I didn't let him do anything, I said. I was reading. He's younger. You know better. He's only 2 years younger. Her face tightened. That attitude is exactly what I mean. Dad replaced the glass that weekend. He told me privately that it wasn't my fault. Mom told relatives Aaron had been a little rambunctious, and that I had overreacted. That became the family pattern. Aaron made mistakes. I failed to prevent them. Aaron forgot things. I should have reminded him. Aaron needed support. I was selfish if I had plans. When I was 15, I missed a school awards dinner because Aaron had been benched at a basketball game, and Mom decided he needed the whole family there to lift his spirits. Dad promised he would make it up to me. He took me to breakfast the next morning and gave me a card that said he was proud of me. I kept the card. I also remembered the empty chair where my family was supposed to be. By the time we were adults, Aaron had learned to treat responsibility like a coat he could hand to me when the room got warm. Dad got sick slowly, then all at once. At first it was appointments every few months, prescription changes, and insurance calls that lasted longer than the actual doctor visits. Then it became specialist appointments, lab work, late-night drives, medication schedules, and a whiteboard on the refrigerator covered in times, doses, and phone numbers. Most of the handwriting on that board was mine. Aaron's name appeared twice in 6 months. One note said, "Pick up Dad's refill." The other had been crossed out because he texted me an hour before he was supposed to arrive. "Can't do hospitals today. Too much mentally. You're better at this stuff." I stared at that message in the pharmacy line while holding Dad's insurance card and a bag of crackers because he had stopped eating full meals. I wrote back, "Fine." That one word became another coat I wore for him. Mom still told relatives Aaron was taking Dad's illness the hardest. At family gatherings, she would touch Aaron's arm and say, "He feels everything so deeply." Meanwhile, I was the one keeping extra copies of Dad's medication list in my purse. I knew which pharmacy technician could fix a rejected claim, which foods Dad could tolerate after treatment, and which bathroom light he wanted left on because he hated waking up in complete darkness. I paid for small things because it was easier than watching Mom turn every receipt into a crisis. Copays, medical supplies, groceries, gas, a replacement walker tray, the fee for returning equipment after Dad died. Sometimes Mom paid me back. Usually she said she would and forgot. Aaron showed up for the moments that had an audience. He came to one major appointment wearing a new jacket and spent most of the time in the waiting room telling cousins by text how difficult the day was. He took a photo of his hand holding Dad's and posted it after asking me to move my purse out of the frame. At the hospital, I handled the discharge instructions. Later, Mom told everyone, Aaron never left his father's side. I didn't correct her. For years I thought staying quiet meant I was mature. I thought if I refused to compete, the truth would eventually become obvious on its own. It didn't. Silence doesn't always look dignified from the outside. Sometimes it just looks like agreement. Near the end, Dad had good days and bad days. On one of the better days, I was sitting beside him in a quiet room, sorting mail into piles he could understand. He was too tired to read much, but he still wanted to know what everything was. "Anything exciting?" he asked. "Your insurance company would like to remind you they exist." He smiled, thoughtful of them. There was a bank envelope, 2 medical statements, and a birthday card from someone he hadn't spoken to in years. I opened the card and set it where he could see it. He watched me for a while. "You're the only one who asks what I want," he said. I looked up. "What do you mean?" "Everybody else asks what happens next. You ask what I want." I knew he wasn't only talking about the mail. That's what daughters are supposed to ask. His eyes filled, but he blinked it away. Dad had always been embarrassed by tears, even his own. "You know you're my daughter, right?" "Yes." No matter what anybody says later. The last word bothered me. Why would anyone say something later? He looked toward the doorway. Mom had gone home to shower. Aaron had texted that he was emotionally wiped and would visit the next day. Dad reached for my hand. "People get strange around grief and money." I tried to make a joke. "Good thing our family has always been so normal." He laughed, then coughed until the nurse came in. I didn't push him. That was one of several moments I replayed after he died, wishing I had asked one more question. The funeral happened in a blur of dark clothes, paper cups, sympathy cards, and people saying, "Let me know if you need anything," before disappearing as soon as there was actual work to do. Mom leaned on me for everything. She asked me to contact the medical equipment company, organize the funeral receipts, return borrowed chairs, answer condolence messages, and write thank you notes to people she barely remembered. I created a spreadsheet for expenses because she insisted things were getting mixed up. I sorted bills in her dining room while casserole dishes crowded the kitchen counters. Aaron carried one box to the garage and accepted praise for handling the heavy stuff. A week after the funeral, I asked Mom whether Dad had left instructions about the trust. I wasn't demanding money. I wanted to know what needed to happen, what paperwork had to be filed, and whether she wanted me to contact Mr. Sloan, the attorney Dad had used for years. Her expression changed instantly. "Do not turn grief into a shopping list." I set down the stack of envelopes in my hand. "I'm not asking what I get. I'm asking what Dad wanted. Your father wanted me taken care of." "I'm sure he did." "Then let me handle it." That would have been easier to accept if she hadn't spent the previous week asking me to handle everything else. Aaron arrived while we were still in the dining room. He walked in without knocking, opened the refrigerator, and asked whether there was any of Aunt Iris's baked pasta left. Mom immediately softened. "There's a plate for you, sweetheart." I watched her warm his food while the funeral receipt sat in front of me. A few minutes later, Aaron leaned against the counter and said, "Mom says you're stressing her out about the estate." I asked one question. "She just lost her husband." "I just lost my dad." He gave me the look he had perfected by middle school, the one that suggested I was being technically accurate but emotionally inconvenient. "It's different for her." Mom said nothing. I gathered the receipts and put them into the labeled envelopes I had bought. "Call me when you're ready to talk about the actual paperwork." Mom turned from the microwave. "You see? This is what I mean. Everything has to be on your schedule." I almost laughed. For 6 months, my schedule had been built around Dad's medication alarms. Instead, I picked up my purse and left. The first request to sign came 11 days later. Aaron texted me a photo of the first page of something titled Family Beneficiary Agreement. "Mom wants to keep everything clean and simple. You sign, I sign, and nobody drags this out." I zoomed in on the image. Most of the text was too blurry to read, but I could see phrases like waiver of claim, release of interest, and final settlement. I wrote back, "Send me the complete document." He responded with a thumbs up, then nothing. 2 days later he texted again. "It's not a big deal unless you make it one." I replied, "Then you won't mind me having a lawyer look at it." He called immediately. I let it ring twice before answering. "Why are you bringing lawyers into this?" he asked. "You sent me a legal document. It's a family agreement. It contains the words irrevocable release. So I'm not signing it from a phone photo." He let out a long breath. "Mom is trying to grieve, Zoe. So am I. You know what I mean." I did. In our family, Mom's feelings were weather. Everyone else adjusted plans around them. "I'll review it when I get the full copy. You always make everything difficult." "No, I read things before signing them." He hung up. That night, Mom left me a voicemail. Her public voice was warm and controlled. Her private voice had sharp edges. "Zoe, I need you to stop upsetting your brother. Your father wanted peace. Just sign the agreement and stop acting like Daniel owed you anything. He gave you a home. He gave you a family. That should have been enough." I listened to it twice. The first time, I felt like I was 12 again, standing beside broken glass while being told I should have prevented someone else's behavior. The second time, I heard evidence. I saved the voicemail, backed it up, and wrote down the date and time. I didn't call her back. A few days later, Mom asked me to come over and finish sorting Dad's boxes from the garage. The request arrived as though the voicemail had never happened. "There are insurance statements everywhere. Please deal with them before they get ruined." I almost said no. Then I remembered Dad's unfinished paperwork and agreed to go while Mom was out with Iris. The garage smelled like dust, cardboard, and the peppermint gum Dad used to keep in the center console of his car. There were boxes of bank statements, old tax records, pharmacy receipts, owner's manuals for appliances they no longer owned, and stacks of birthday cards he had saved for reasons only he understood. I sat on the concrete floor and started sorting. Keep. Shred. Ask attorney. Medical. Personal. Near the bottom of a box labeled 2024 insurance, I found a bundle of old cards tied with a rubber band. 3 were birthday cards I had given Dad. 1 was a card he had given me when I turned 21. The front said, "You'll always be my little girl, even when you're old enough to know better." Inside, beneath his usual signature, he had written, "No paperwork in the world could make you more my daughter than you already are." I held that card for a long time. Under it was a plain sealed envelope with Zoe written across the front in Dad's shaky handwriting. It wasn't hidden in a safe or tucked behind a secret panel. It was in a cardboard box under insurance statements and a manual for a discontinued coffee maker. That made it feel more like him. Inside was a handwritten note, copies of trust-related documents, a bank statement, a printout of an email chain, and a photocopy of a signature page. The note was short. "Zoe, if they try to make you feel like a guest in this family, read this before you sign anything. I should have handled more of this out loud. I am sorry I did not. Call Sloan. Use the number on the email. Do not let anyone rush you. You are my daughter. That is not a debt. Dad." I read it once. Then again. By the third time, the words blurred. I sat on the floor with my back against an old cabinet and cried so quietly that I could still hear the hum of the garage refrigerator. I wasn't crying because Dad had left me money. At that point, I didn't even understand what most of the documents meant. I cried because he had known. He had known someone might try to make me feel temporary after he was gone. He had known Mom might turn my adoption into a bargaining tool. And he had known his own silence had helped create the conditions for it. The email chain was between Dad and Mr. Sloan. It was dated several months before Dad died. Dad had written that he was concerned about documents presented during hospitalization and a transfer authorization he did not remember signing. He also mentioned withdrawals from an account used for household and medical expenses. Mr. Sloan's reply was cautious. He advised Dad not to approve further changes without independent review. He confirmed that disputed transfers tied to the family trust should be paused if a beneficiary raised a documented objection. He also wrote that Dad's prior instructions required Zoe to be notified before any final distribution affecting her interest. The photocopied signature page was dated on a night Dad had been hospitalized. I knew the date because I had been there. Dad had been heavily medicated and unable to hold a cup without help. He couldn't have reviewed a multi-page financial authorization. I wasn't even sure he could have signed his name. Yet there it was. Daniel. The signature looked smooth, confident, almost identical to one on an older insurance form. Too identical. The bank statement showed 3 withdrawals over 6 weeks. 2 were labeled as transfers. 1 ended in an account number I didn't recognize. Dad had circled them and written, Ask A. I took photographs of everything before moving a single page. Then I called the number on the email. Mr. Sloan's assistant answered. I gave my name and said I had found documents my father had left for me. She put me on hold for less than a minute. Mr. Sloan came on the line himself. Zoe, he said, and the seriousness in his voice made my stomach drop. I'm glad you called. Are these real? Yes. You knew Dad was worried? Yes. Why didn't anyone contact me? We did not have confirmation that a disputed transfer had been submitted after his death. Your father asked that you be notified before final distribution, and I intended to contact you when formal administration began. Has someone asked you to sign a release? I looked at Aaron's blurry photo on my phone. Yes. Do not sign anything under social pressure. What exactly did Dad think happened? There was a pause. I need to be careful about what I say before reviewing the documents in your possession. Your father was concerned that changes were made while he was hospitalized. He specifically questioned whether a transfer authorization reflected his informed consent. So I'm not imagining this. No, you are not. I pressed my fingers to my forehead. Can they move everything without me? Not properly. If the documents are administered according to your father's instructions and the objection is documented, send me copies. Keep the originals secure. Do not leave them in the house. I looked toward the open garage door. Mom doesn't know I found them. I recommend that you keep it that way until we have reviewed them. That was the moment the conflict changed for me. Until then, I had still been thinking like a daughter trying to calm down a difficult family situation. After that call, I started thinking like someone whose signature was valuable to people who had never valued her voice. I scanned every page. I emailed copies to Mr. Sloan from a new folder with a password. I stored the originals away from Mom's house. I downloaded the voicemail in Aaron's messages. I gathered the receipts I had paid during Dad's illness, not because I expected reimbursement, but because Mom had already started telling relatives that I had done nothing but ask questions about money. I had Zelle and Venmo records for copays, pharmacy runs, groceries, medical supplies, and funeral-related expenses. I found photos of the caregiving schedule on the refrigerator. My handwriting covered nearly every day. Mr. Sloan called me 2 days later. The documents appear consistent with what your father sent me, he said. The signature issue requires formal review. What does that mean? It means no one should be asking you for a waiver at this stage. It also means any disputed transfer should be paused until the supporting records are examined. Can you stop it? I can notify the acting parties and the financial institution of the dispute. Depending on their response, further action may be necessary. For now, do not sign. I wrote down every word. He added, Your father did not leave you a puzzle for entertainment. He left you a warning because he believed pressure was likely. That hurt more than I expected. Did he say who he thought was responsible? He expressed concern about Aaron's involvement. He also believed Vivian was aware of at least one document he questioned. I closed my eyes. There it was. Not a dramatic confession. Not a secret recording. Just the truth I had been trying not to name. Mom protected Aaron. Dad knew. And Dad had finally acted, quietly and too late, but enough. I still didn't confront either of them. I wanted to see whether they would back off if I simply asked for review. They didn't. They escalated. Mom started calling relatives. I knew because Aunt Iris called me one evening and opened with, I don't want to take sides. People who say that usually already have. I'm not asking you to. Your mother says you're holding up the estate. I haven't been given a complete accounting. She says Aaron is trying to keep things simple. Aaron sent me a release and refused to send all the supporting documents. Iris sighed. Zoe, this is not the way to honor your father. What way would that be? Making the family fight over money. I looked at the envelope on my table. I didn't start a fight. Your mother is devastated. My mother told me Dad giving me a home should have been enough. Silence. Then Iris said, she's grieving. It was the family's most reliable eraser. Grief. It excused cruelty, favoritism, lies, and apparently legal pressure. I'm grieving too, I said. I know, honey. No, she didn't. If she had known, she wouldn't have called to persuade me to surrender something she hadn't bothered to understand. A week before the 1-year anniversary of Dad's death, Mom announced she was hosting a memorial dinner. Her text went to several relatives individually, which was how she avoided the messiness of a group conversation while still controlling the message. We're gathering to remember Daniel. He would want peace and family unity. Please come. I received a separate message 20 minutes later. Bring your identification. Aaron will have the family agreement ready so we can finally put this behind us. I stared at the screen. Then Aaron texted. Don't turn dinner into a legal circus. Sign, eat, and let Mom have one peaceful night. I wrote, send the full accounting first. He responded, you don't need it. I didn't answer. An hour later, another message arrived. Mom said if we do it in front of everyone, you won't make a scene. I read that sentence 3 times. He had admitted the plan as casually as if he were explaining seating arrangements. They weren't inviting me to a memorial dinner. They were building a stage. They wanted relatives there because they believed public shame would do what private pressure hadn't. They would frame the waiver as an act of love, use my adoption to question my loyalty, and force me to choose between signing away my rights or appearing greedy in front of everyone. Aaron assumed I still believed shame was stronger than paperwork. I took a screenshot. Then I replied, good to know. Mr. Sloan advised me not to sign and told me he would send formal notices if anyone attempted to proceed. He didn't tell me to attend the dinner. He actually suggested I consider avoiding it. But I had spent my whole life letting Mom tell people who I was while I stayed quiet because correcting her felt impolite. This time the audience mattered. I prepared carefully. I printed copies of the signature page, the hospital record showing Dad had been admitted that night, the relevant section of the attorney email, Aaron's message about staging the signing, and a transcript of Mom's voicemail. I also printed a short summary of the expenses I had covered, with attached payment records. I didn't include every receipt. I wasn't trying to bury anyone in paper. I chose the pages that told the clearest story. I put the copies in a plain envelope. The originals stayed elsewhere. I sent Mr. Sloan a message confirming where I was going and why. He replied with one sentence. Do not surrender originals or sign anything. The evening of the dinner, Mom's house looked exactly the way it always did when she wanted people impressed. Dad's framed photo stood on a small table near the dining room, surrounded by white candles and sympathy cards she had saved. The kitchen counters were crowded with casserole dishes, foil-covered trays, and desserts from relatives who believed food could fill any silence. The family photo wall ran along the hallway. There were pictures of me when I was little. Missing front teeth, crooked braids, Dad's arm around my shoulders. After Aaron was born, I appeared less often. There were entire rows from vacations where I was either behind the camera or absent. I had noticed that years ago and trained myself not to care. That night, I cared just enough to understand the pattern. Mom greeted me at the door with both hands extended. Zoe, she said warmly, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. I'm so glad you came. She hugged me before I could decide whether I wanted to be hugged. Her perfume was the same one she had worn to the funeral. You brought your identification, she whispered near my ear. I brought what I needed. She pulled back and searched my face. Then she smiled again for the room. Aunt Iris was arranging napkins. 2 cousins were talking near the kitchen. An older uncle stood beside Dad's photo with his head bowed. Aaron was at the dining table, tapping a pen against a stack of papers. He wore a pale blue shirt Dad used to compliment. That felt deliberate. Hey, he said when I walked in. Hey. He glanced at the envelope in my hand. What's that? Paper. His mouth tightened. Dinner started with fake warmth. People told stories about Dad. Some were funny. Some were only funny because he was gone and nobody had to admit how irritated they had been at the time. Iris talked about Dad getting lost on the way to a family reunion and refusing to ask for directions. A cousin remembered how he always carried mints in his pocket. I told the story of him teaching me to ride a bike and letting go before I was ready. For a few minutes the room felt honest. Then Mom stood with her wine glass. She had a gift for making an insult sound like a toast. Daniel believed in family, she began. He believed in loyalty, sacrifice, and knowing what really matters. People quieted. Aaron stopped tapping the pen. Mom looked around the table, letting the pause settle. This past year has been difficult in ways I never imagined. Grief can bring people together, but it can also reveal what is in their hearts. Her eyes moved to me. I set down my fork. Some people are invited into a family, not born into it, she said. And being invited is a blessing. But blessings should create gratitude, not entitlement. No one moved. The candles beside Dad's photo flickered in the air from the heating vent. Iris stared at her plate. One cousin looked directly at me, then quickly away. Aaron slid a set of papers across the table. The pen rested on top. Sign it, he said. Prove you love Dad for Dad, not for what he left behind. I looked at the first page. It was the same agreement from the blurry photo, now printed clearly. The language waived my right to contest transfers, released the acting trustee from claims, and acknowledged that I had received complete information. I had received no accounting. I had received no complete information. I had received a pen between mashed potatoes and dessert. I'm not signing legal papers between a toast and pie, I said. Mom lowered her glass. There. That tone. That is exactly what we have dealt with all year. What tone? The coldness. The suspicion. We gave you a life, Zoe. I wish you remembered that before making demands. A murmur moved around the table. Aaron leaned back in his chair. You always wanted to be treated like family. This is your chance to act like it. I looked at him, then at Mom, then at the relatives who had been invited to watch me surrender. I had expected anger. What I felt instead was clarity. I had spent years trying to explain myself to people who benefited from misunderstanding me, so I didn't explain. I placed Dad's envelope beside the waiver. Sure, I said. Right after we discussed the signature he couldn't have written. Aaron's pen stopped moving. Mom's face did not change immediately. She was too practiced for that. I don't know what kind of stunt you're attempting, she said. I'm not attempting anything. I rested my hand on the envelope but didn't open it yet. Before I sign, I want to ask everyone here a question. Mom laughed softly. This is not a courtroom. No. It's the audience you chose. The room went still. I looked around the table. Does everyone here believe I'm the one disrespecting Dad? Nobody answered. Iris shifted in her chair. My older uncle cleared his throat and said, Maybe we should all calm down. I am calm. Mom's voice sharpened. Your father wanted peace. If this is really about peace, there should be no problem with review. Aaron pushed the waiver closer. It's one signature. You're making this weird. I looked down at the signature line waiting for my name. Then I opened Dad's envelope. I came here ready to sign if this was really about peace, I said. But you made it about blood, so let's talk about signatures. I placed the photocopy of the transfer authorization on the table. This document is dated the night Dad was admitted to the hospital. Aaron's eyes moved toward Mom. It was quick. But Iris saw it too. I placed the hospital record beside the signature page. Dad was heavily medicated. He couldn't review financial paperwork. He could barely hold a cup. Mom's voice went low. You had no right to take private documents from my home. They were in an envelope with my name on it. You were sorting papers, not searching for ammunition. Ammunition. I placed Dad's note on the table. Dad told me to call Mr. Sloan before signing anything. Aaron reached for the page. I moved it out of his reach. Copies, I said. The originals are secure. His face changed. Until then, he had been annoyed. Now he looked scared. You don't even know what half those papers mean, he said. Then explaining them should be easy. I laid out the attorney email. Mr. Sloan confirmed Dad was concerned about documents changed while he was hospitalized. He also confirmed disputed transfers have to be reviewed before the estate moves forward. Mom sat down slowly. "This is disgusting," she said. "Using your father's illness to attack your brother." "I'm using a date. Your father signed many things while he was sick. Not that night." "You don't know that." "I was there," Aaron said. "Maybe he signed it earlier and it was dated later." I looked at him. "That's your explanation?" "I'm saying paperwork gets processed on different dates. The form says signed and witnessed that night." He opened his mouth, then closed it. I placed the bank statement down next. Dad also questioned 3 withdrawals. Mom's hand tightened around the stem of her glass. "That account paid household expenses. Then the record should show that." "They do." "Good. Mr. Sloan can review them." Aaron reached across the table again, this time faster. One of my cousins, Marcus, put his arm out and blocked him. "Don't grab her stuff," he said. Aaron stared at him. "Stay out of it. You invited all of us into it." That sentence shifted something in the room. Mom looked toward Iris. "I cannot believe you are allowing this." Iris had been one of Mom's strongest defenders. She was the first relative to call me greedy. She had spent the beginning of dinner watching me as if I were a threat to the family's dignity. Now she picked up the signature page. She looked at the hospital date. Then she looked at Mom. "Vivian," she said, "is this fake?" Mom inhaled slowly. "This is not the time." Iris did not look away. "That is not an answer. It is a family matter." "We are the family," Marcus said. Mom's eyes flashed at him. Iris held up the page. "Did Daniel sign this?" "He approved the transfer." "That's not what I asked." Mom's face crumpled with remarkable speed. She covered her mouth and began to cry. For most of my life, that would have ended the conversation. Someone would have comforted her. Someone would have told me to stop. Her tears would have become proof that I had gone too far. This time no one moved. The papers were still on the table. The dates were still the dates. The signature was still too smooth. The funny thing about paperwork is that it does not care who cried first. Aaron stood so suddenly his chair scraped the floor. "This is insane. Dad wanted me to handle things." "Dad wanted you to explain the withdrawals," I said. "I helped him with bills." "Then explain them." "I don't have to explain my relationship with my father to you." "No. You have to explain financial transfers to the attorney." He pointed at me. "You're doing this because you've always been jealous." "Of what?" "Being his actual son." The words landed hard, but not the way he expected. They didn't break me. They exposed him. A cousin near the end of the table whispered, "Oh my God." Iris closed her eyes. Mom stopped crying long enough to say, "Aaron, don't." He looked around and realized too late that the room had changed. I took out the screenshot of his message and placed it beside the waiver. "Mom said if we do it in front of everyone you won't make a scene," I read. Aaron's face drained. "You took that out of context." "What context improves it?" "It meant you'd be more reasonable. It meant you staged a memorial dinner to pressure me into signing a legal release." Mom wiped her cheeks. "We wanted witnesses because you twist everything. Then witnesses are exactly what you have." I placed the transcript of her voicemail down last. I didn't play the audio. I didn't need to. I read one line. "Just sign it and stop acting like Daniel owed you anything. He gave you a home. That should have been enough." I looked at Mom. "Did grief make you say that too?" She stared at me with a hatred so naked that several relatives looked away. "You have always been ungrateful," she said. There was no polished public voice left. "I brought you into this family. I loved you. I raised you. And every time we needed unity, you made yourself the victim." I nodded slowly. "That's the receipt, right?" "What?" "You gave me a home, so I owe you silence forever." "I did not say that. You've been saying it my whole life." Dad's photo sat behind her shoulder. For a second I wished he had been there. Then I remembered that if he had been willing to confront this while alive, we might not have been sitting there at all. Love had made him kind to me. Fear had made him quiet around her. Both things were true. I gathered the copies into a neat stack, leaving one set on the table. I'm not signing. Mom's voice shook. You are destroying this family. No. You wanted witnesses. Now you have them. I picked up Dad's envelope. Aaron stepped toward me. What did Sloan tell you? That you shouldn't ask questions unless you want answers. Zoe. It was the first time that night he had said my name without contempt. I looked at him. What? He lowered his voice. We can work this out privately. I almost smiled. That option existed before you put a waiver beside my dinner plate. I walked toward the hallway. Iris followed me to the door. Zoe, she said softly. I stopped but didn't turn around right away. I'm sorry, she said. I believed your mother. I faced her. You believed the version that required the least from you. She flinched. It was a hard thing to say. It was also true. I know, she whispered. Behind us, Aaron's voice rose from the dining room. Mom started crying again. Someone asked who had witnessed the signature. I put on my coat. Iris said, What happens now? The attorney reviews it. And your mother? That's up to her. I left before the dinner turned into a circus. My hands shook only after I reached my car. I sat behind the wheel with the doors locked and Dad's envelope on the passenger seat. Through the front window, I could see people moving around the dining room. Shadows crossed the curtains. Someone opened the front door, looked outside, then went back in. My phone started buzzing before I pulled away. Aaron. Then Mom. Then Aaron again. I turned the phone face down and drove. The next morning, Mr. Sloan sent formal notice by email and certified mail to the acting trustee, the relevant financial institution, Mom, Aaron, and me. The notice stated that disputed documents and transfers required review before further distribution. It requested complete account records, supporting invoices, witness information, and copies of all documents signed during Dad's hospitalization. It also stated that no beneficiary release should be treated as valid unless signed voluntarily after full disclosure and independent review. Aaron called me 7 times. Mom called 4. I answered neither. By afternoon, Aaron sent a text. You have no idea what you just started. I replied once. Mr. Sloan has my documents. Contact him. He wrote back immediately. You think Dad wanted this? I looked at Dad's note. Yes. Then I blocked him for the rest of the day. The certified letters arrived 2 days later. Mom left a voicemail at 8:12 that morning. You embarrassed me in my own home. You turned Daniel's memorial into a courtroom. People are calling me as if I'm some kind of criminal. Your father would be ashamed of what you did. At 10:47 she left another. I hope you are happy. Iris won't return my calls. Aaron is sick over this. You always wanted to divide us. At 3:05 her tone changed. We can still resolve this as a family if you stop involving outsiders. Mr. Sloan had been Dad's attorney for 14 years. Apparently he became an outsider the moment he asked for records. I sent Mom a short email. Future estate communication should go through Mr. Sloan. I will not discuss or sign anything privately. I will also no longer pay household, medical, or personal expenses on your behalf. Please remove my number from any autopay or service account connected to your home. She replied in less than 5 minutes. After everything we did for you? I wrote one final sentence. No. I stopped letting you use the word family as a receipt for mistreatment. Then I stopped replying. The review did not produce a dramatic arrest the next morning. Real consequences moved more slowly. First came requests for records. Then requests for better records because Aaron's first explanation did not match the account statements. The 3 withdrawals totaled a little over $27,000. Aaron claimed they had covered household expenses and improvements to Mom's home. The receipts he produced accounted for less than half. One transfer had gone to an account he controlled. Another had been used to pay a personal debt. The third was harder to trace because it had moved through 2 accounts before paying for what Aaron described as family costs. Mr. Sloan asked him to define family costs. Aaron did not answer in writing. The signature page caused the most trouble. The listed witness said she had signed a stack of documents at Mom's request, but had not watched Dad sign that specific form. The notary record did not match the time printed on the authorization. An older document contained a signature nearly identical down to a small ink skip in the first letter. Someone had copied it. No one confessed. They didn't need to. The transfer was suspended pending formal resolution. Mom was removed from sole control of the disputed portion of the trust by agreement after Mr. Sloan made it clear that he would seek court supervision if necessary. A neutral fiduciary took over the accounting. Aaron's expected access disappeared. His calls became less threatening and more desperate. He emailed me once from a new address after I blocked his number. I made mistakes because Dad was sick and Mom was overwhelmed. You're acting like I stole from strangers. I forwarded it to Mr. Sloan without replying. A month later, Aaron tried a different approach. We're still siblings. This doesn't have to define us. I stared at that sentence for a while. Then I wrote back. Being siblings did not stop you from staging a dinner to pressure me into waiving my rights. The review will continue. Do not contact me outside estate matters. He answered with 3 paragraphs accusing me of being cold. I did not respond. Some relatives apologized. Marcus called first. I should have asked questions before dinner, he said. You didn't know. I knew enough to notice something was wrong. I just didn't want to get involved. That's how Mom kept control. He was quiet. You were right, he said. But that was cold. So was inviting me to be humiliated into signing legal papers. Fair. I appreciated that he didn't argue. Another cousin sent a long message saying she had believed Mom because Mom had described me as obsessed with the inheritance. She apologized for whispering about me at dinner. An older relative took a different position. You had every right to protect yourself, he told me. But dinner was not the place. Dinner was where they put the waiver. You could have left. I could have. Then they would have told everyone I stormed out because I was greedy. You still made a private issue public. They made it public before I opened the envelope. He didn't agree. That was fine. For the first time, I didn't need unanimous approval to trust my own memory. Iris came to see me 3 weeks after the dinner. She brought one of Dad's old photo albums. I found this at Vivian's, she said. I thought you should have it. We sat at my table and turned the pages. There were pictures I hadn't seen in years. Dad holding me at the zoo. Dad asleep on the couch while I balanced a paper crown on his head. Dad standing behind my bicycle with one hand on the seat. Iris stopped at a photo from a family picnic. You know, she said, your mother used to be different. Was she? She was softer. Or I was younger. Iris looked down. I kept making excuses for her because I thought protecting her was protecting the family. And what did it protect? Her. That was the first honest answer she had given me. She told me Mom had stopped speaking to her after the dinner. She says I betrayed her by asking about the signature. You asked one question. I know. That's all it took. Iris nodded. Before she left, she asked whether I would ever forgive Mom. I don't know, I said. Do you want to? I thought about it. I want her to tell the truth without making me pay for hearing it. Iris's eyes filled. I'm not sure she can. Then forgiveness isn't the first problem. The estate review continued for months. Eventually, the disputed transfer was invalidated. Aaron agreed to repay part of the missing money immediately and have the rest deducted from his share, rather than force the matter into longer litigation. The neutral fiduciary remained in place through final distribution. Mom kept her home and the support Dad had lawfully arranged for her. I did not try to take that away. I received the share Dad had documented for me. It wasn't a magical fortune. It wasn't enough to transform my life overnight. What mattered was that it was mine because Dad had wanted it to be mine, not because Mom had granted me permission. Mr. Sloan mailed me copies of the final accounting and a certified letter confirming the disputed matters had been resolved. The envelope was thick, ordinary, and far less emotionally powerful than the one Dad had left in the garage. Paperwork rarely looks like justice. Sometimes it just looks like a date, a signature, and a person finally refusing to be rushed. Mom never apologized for the adoption comments. She sent messages about being embarrassed, abandoned, misunderstood, and punished. She said relatives had turned against her. She said Aaron was struggling financially because of one mistake. She said Dad would have wanted me to show compassion. Not once did she say, I should not have told you that a home was all you deserved. Not once did she say you were his daughter. Not once did she ask what it felt like to hear her use my adoption as a weapon at my father's memorial dinner. So I stopped waiting. I removed myself from the small systems that had kept me tied to her. I canceled the grocery delivery account linked to my card. I removed my payment information from her phone plan. I returned the spare key to her house by certified mail. I sent the login information for the utility accounts she had asked me to manage and told her she would need to update the payment methods. She called Iris and said I was abandoning her. Iris told her, Zoe is not your unpaid staff. Mom stopped speaking to Iris again. Aaron tried to get me to cover one of Mom's bills just this once, because he was short on cash after the repayment agreement. I forwarded the request to the neutral fiduciary. Aaron called that cruel. I called it accurate. I didn't need revenge after that. The evidence was faster than anger and cleaner than shouting. Mom lost control of the family story because every time she said I had attacked her for money, someone asked about the forged signature. Every time Aaron said I had torn the family apart, someone asked why he had wanted the waiver signed in front of relatives. They still had people who believed them. Families are good at preserving convenient versions of the truth. But they no longer had everyone. More importantly, they no longer had me. The first birthday after the estate closed, I opened the photo album Iris had brought me. Dad's old card was tucked inside the front cover. No paperwork in the world could make you more my daughter than you already are. I used to read that line as reassurance. Now I read it as an apology to. Dad loved me, but he left me to fight a battle he had avoided for years. I can hold both truths without turning either one into a lie. I miss him. I'm grateful he left the paper trail. I'm angry he knew I might need it. All of that can exist at once. I no longer speak to Aaron except through email when a final estate issue requires it. I have limited contact with Mom. There are no surprise visits, no financial favors, and no conversations where my adoption is used to rank my place in the family. The last time she tried, she said, After we chose you, I never imagined you would treat us this way. I answered, You chose to adopt a child. You did not purchase a lifetime of obedience. She hung up. I didn't call back. For most of my life, I believed belonging was something I had to earn every day by being useful, quiet, forgiving, and easy to blame. At Dad's memorial dinner, Mom and Aaron expected that old version of me to sit beneath the family photos, swallow the insult, and sign wherever they pointed. Instead, I read the fine print. I spent my whole life trying to prove I belonged at that table. That night, I finally realized I didn't need a seat at a table where love came with fine print. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.